Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Today's adventure takes us out to the West Coast from England to Arizona. She's seen it all, from artist relations to hospitality and a whole lot more. Please welcome the Vice President of Entertainment for Venue Coalition, Natalie Caplan. Natalie, how you doing?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Natalie, Venue Coalition is something a lot of us are very familiar with, but a lot of people listening aren't. So tell us about what it is and kind of what your role is.
So Venue Coalition and Arena Network, who are, were originally two companies founded 25 years ago, respectively, and are now under one roof. They were both formed with the mission of helping independent venues, helping them acquire more information, and ultimately helping them drive content into their buildings. Arena Network was started back in 1999 by John Meglin and Paul Gongaware, who have been involved in Concerts West and AEG for many years. And, they were sort of the first of its kind in terms of a network of arenas that would help each other, that would share information, and really be a source to each other for keeping their eye on the ball, knowing what was happening. Obviously, the environment of live music and of venues and promoters was very different back then. But that was back in 1999. In 2005, Venue Coalition was formed by Jeff Appergen, who was a longtime player in the industry, a producer of live events, a booker, and they started up in Canada. They saw what Arena Network had done for the major venues down in the United States and said, wait a minute, this kind of knowledge sharing, this kind of intel, this kind of advocacy is needed in another way up in Canada with all of the venues that were up there. So that's where they started. And for many years, Arena Network and Venue Coalition coexisted, slightly different. Arena Network focused more on the major venues. Venue Coalition started in Canada and then came down to the United States, focusing on secondary and tertiary markets. But ultimately, we were doing the same thing. And then in 2020, when the world stopped as we know it, it became a good opportunity for these two companies to merge and coexist and really help our clients on a larger level, representing majors, secondaries, tertiaries, everything in between. We have 18 venues up in Canada, actually probably 20 plus venues up in Canada, and over 120 arenas down here in the States, close to 40 theaters, convention centers, some stadiums. And really what we do is provide support services to those independent venues, with the focus being on the word independent. They are not managed by the big management companies. They do not have that kind of support system that sometimes those bring. So what we're trying to do is be that support system to them. We're trying to help them not only with the competitive intelligence of trying to get more shows into their venues, but also the operational, questions that come up, the marketing support that we give to them. And we really try to be that support for the independently run and managed venues. And that role can be anything, because whether you're a major building in a major market or you're a smaller building in a tertiary market, your needs are very different.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's really what we concentrate on, is the support that we give to those now close to 150 plus venues.
I'm sure what made a lot of sense too is obviously during 2020, it brought to light very quickly that people that were not in these pre-existing networks, felt very isolated during that time. I think we all did, even if we were, but at least if you were in one of these big major, management companies, they were able to share information and kind of like bring some sort of unification and maybe even like licking wounds and crying to each other a lot. So I think it's really great that that there is this group that's supporting those independent venues, because they don't really necessarily have that. And as I'm sure working with all of these, you understand that every venue, even the ones that are under those other umbrellas, they're all a little different, right? Some of them are city owned, some of them are university owned, some of them are both, some of them are private owned, but they've got a university team, or city owned. I mean, it's just like 100 different ways a arena or venue can be structured, and sometimes that can be isolating. At times when you feel like you're the only one that's in your unique situation. So I love that there's support that can be provided to them that makes them feel a part of the greater family.
Absolutely. As you said, I mean, a lot of times you feel like you're on an island. And, listen, I think everybody has their own support systems. Over the years, you build those up, whether you're a general manager and you have other GMs to go to, or you're in the marketing department and you have, the EVMC networking. You build that up, but there is nothing like having 100 venues on a call, all sharing information, and being able to learn and gain insight from that. And as you said, during 2020 and the shutdown beyond that, if you were isolated before, it wasn't getting any easier. And it really was, as we all know, unprecedented. And so it was a lot of times trying to figure out how to support venues that were completely shut down. What they all did every single day, their actual reason for being was impossible to achieve. And I don't know what the word would be. Trauma is a little bit too harsh of a word, but it was a traumatic experience for many people. I mean, beyond what we did, obviously, in terms of your professional life, you had your personal life to deal with and whatever that brought with it. So I think venues saw their teams decimated. I mean, you had to say goodbye to a lot of times an incredible portion of your departments that were being laid off. And as we know from venue life, that's your family. And so it was hopefully a cathartic experience to be able to support those venues during that time. And then on top of that, you did have some venues that were pushing through and trying to do events in whatever capacity they could do at that moment of time during the shutdown. That obviously depended on where you were in the country. As we know, restrictions varied wildly, which made touring impossible, because how could you possibly even think about touring? Exactly. But one-offs happened. And they happened because of the nimbleness and the dexterity and, frankly, the desire of venues to keep doing what venues do, which is bring their communities together and to create memories and put on events. And they did that in whatever way they could. And they did that oftentimes with the help either of their internal departments or with smaller independent promoters that were still out there kind of keeping that train slowly chugging along. I was lucky. I went down to the Grove of Anaheim here in Southern California. Nederlander Concerts, who used to be my former boss, had created this pop-up
right.
outdoor
The drive-ins.
drive-in
Yeah.
experience. Exactly. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
remember the drive-ins, you know?
I feel like I was there with Vanessa sometimes, how much we were talking about
Exactly.
it. But it was very fun. It was cool.
But it was also an amazing experience. Standing there outside your car and going, oh my God, I miss this so much. And having that connection, which we all love, and that's probably part of the reason why we all still do this crazy job, is for that reason. It's for that moment. It's to look around and see the smiles on all of those faces. And there were glimpses of that even through the hardest times of that shutdown. And kudos to the venues, to the teams people that made that happen, because it was no easy feat.
Now you have this combined new company that is able to shepherd people, this many years after. And probably as much as it was trying at the time in 2020, I mean, it's been probably equally trying in a different way in 2023 and 24, where you have this huge resurgence of events, and you almost have the opposite issue of you're going from how do we deal with no events to how do we deal with more events than we've ever had. Yes. And maybe we got our staff back to what it was in 2019, but now we've got double the events we had in 2019, and, supporting, the extreme other side of that.
Absolutely. That ramping back up was very different. It looked very different in each venue. As we've said, a lot of the teams were bare bones. And what did that ramp up look like? And a lot of times it looked like you couldn't really start to rebuild your departments until you had the events. And so there were
Right.
events happening with departments that really,
yeah.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Exactly. And so again, we hopefully served as a resource to help those venues get back online, and help to support them, to give them ideas, and to help share what other venues were doing and how to, so that every venue didn't have to reinvent the wheel after, such an intense and awesome, and I use that in the true sense of the word, not the good sense of the word, experience that we all kind of went through. So no, it is, and it's a joy to be part of that, because you get to witness that kind of success as it starts to happen. And even though I'm sitting, I work remotely and I'm sitting in my house in Los Angeles, it's still just as satisfying to be part of successes that happen in all of our venues around North America.
Natalie, you're part of successes, like you said, all around North America. But what is it you actually do?
That's a
What's your
good
day
question.
to day? What's your day to day? A day in the life of Natalie.
Yes. Well, it starts with getting my child off to school, because I have a 10-year-old. And fortunately, a great partner as well, who takes the morning shift. I'm not known as a morning person to people who know and love me. I guess live events was my calling, because I'm definitely better at night than I am in the morning. But it does start there. And I would say, my role within the company is pretty varied, which is exactly how I like it, because I am a true Gemini. I like to have my hands in lots of different things. And so it can be one day I'm focused on booking, and it's reach outs to content providers. It is, finding out what's happening. And it's really, I liken what we do to sort of marrying venues and opportunities. And we are out there sort of playing that role of reaching out to the content providers on a consistent basis, whether that be producers, promoters, or agents, finding out what's happening in their world, and then finding out what opportunity lives within that for our venues, and really marrying those two and trying to create opportunity where maybe there wasn't one before, trying to advocate for our venues and why one venue might be a better play over another. It's a little bit of a lobbyist or a little bit of a cheerleader, you could say. And it's really, in the booking world, that's what we are primarily trying to do is drive more content. It could be a new promoter or a promoter that a venue hasn't worked with before and trying to establish in a relationship, not just for one event, but in perpetuity, and a relationship that can go on to bring events annually. And so there's that part of the booking world. There's the client services part that I'm also involved in, because as we, certainly with the merger of the two companies and then the growth that we have experienced over the last few years coming out of the pandemic, we are servicing, 150 venues strong. And so digging in daily to the needs of what those venues are and really trying to help support them. And sometimes that's supplemental support, trying to connect them with people that can help them with RFPs or, with their vendor agreements. We're lucky that within Venue Coalition and Arena Network, we have a wealth of venue knowledge with the small but mighty team that we have internally. And you have people who, like Jim McHugh, who has been an agent, a venue manager, a promoter, a booker. Todd Hunt ran a venue for 25 years in Tupelo, booked that venue. Steve Kersner, who ran SAP Center up in, San Jose for over 2 decades. Joanne Armstrong, who opened the building down in Anaheim with Vanessa, speaking of her, and then went on to open Acrisure Arena. So between us, and not to mention Andrew Prince, who now heads both of Arena Network and Venue Coalition, was an integral part of Venue Coalition from its inception and now runs both buildings. So we have, it's a small team, but an incredible amount of venue experience. And we can use that experience to really help our venues with any question that they have, and then bring in, if needed, other experts in the industry, again, to help sort of provide that support system and that safety net when needed.
We talk a lot about what goes on, and the neat thing is when you get to talk to venues all across North America, and like you said, 150 venues plus, and a lot of stuff going on. What are you seeing as some of the biggest challenges that we're having in 2024 as an industry?
Well, I think, as we just talked about, 22 coming out of the pandemic, 23, it's been incredible. Right, it's like the gold rush. I mean, it has just
lots of gold,
been,
but a little violence.
Lots of rushing.
Lots of rushing. Yeah, exactly.
It's been unlike anything we've ever seen. I mean, before the pandemic, the industry was the healthiest it's ever been. Record numbers, record ticket sales, record average ticket sales. That has only increased after the pandemic. And so it's really, I think, while we've all thoroughly enjoyed this, the resurgence that came after the pandemic and this incredible amount of choice that has been out there, we've also all known that at some point it was probably unsustainable, right? It's the question of what is the ceiling?
Pendulum had to swing back a little eventually. Yeah.
Right. It couldn't possibly go on this way. And I think you're seeing a little bit of that pullback in terms of volume. I think you're seeing a little bit of price resistance, finally. I say finally, not that it's, you don't want it, but you knew it was coming.
Right. For sure.
And so it's, I suppose, trying to navigate what does our norm look like now? Because everything was turned upside down. Even the dependability and the consistency of when shows would announce and when those on sales would happen, and all of the structure behind it was sort of set in place. You would have these patterns that you could kind of depend on an annual basis, and all of a sudden there's no rhyme or reason. Arenas were typically much slower in the summers, but I don't know that that's been yes, they're slower. The amphitheater season is is the behemoth that it is and takes a lot of content out. But I think arenas have been busier than they've ever been. And yeah, so I think the question is, what does that look like moving forward into 25, 26, 27? I mean, I wish we all had a glass ball to look into and be able to anticipate. But I think most people are cautiously optimistic. I think the general state of the live music industry has never been more robust and healthier. And I think will continue to be that way. But I also think that there are some sort of, like we said, some little bit of pullback in some areas that I think will have adjustments made naturally, you know, whether it's the repricing. I think we've unfortunately seen more cancellations in recent months than we've ever seen before. You could say we've never seen as much volume. So is that sort of a natural part of that?
Right.
So the challenges still exist out there. It's still more expensive than ever to put on a tour. And that obviously shows in all areas of the pricing. And so I think it's just a matter of having your eye on the ball, you know, whether you're the booker or you're the GM or you're the marketer on the venue side, your promoter relationships, and having an open communication with understanding that what was for the prior 24 months might need to be tweaked a little bit in the upcoming 24 months and beyond, and whatever that might look like.
And I think it'll be fascinating too to see what those tour cycles look like, right? So you almost could count on certain artists, like they're going to go out every other year or every third year, and you know, maybe they're going to scale up to certain venues or scale down. And then you have this gap where no one's touring. So then, of course, coming off of that, then everyone's touring. So there is no gap. And so I think you're now hitting this interesting gap, and you're also seeing some people go out that maybe did in 22. And it's fascinating to kind of see what that return to kind of equilibrium is looking like.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think it's just about, like I said, you know, being forward thinking, using the support that you have, talking to other venues, keeping your relationships, and talking to promoters and to agents, and really just learning and absorbing what's happening out there so that you can take it back to your own venue and manage the expectations. Because I would imagine that after the last couple of years, you know, the owners and the finance people, you might have to manage their expectations a little bit, that this might not last forever. You know, not everything is going to.
We've seen the extremes, yeah, exactly. But probably the truth lies somewhere in the middle, or the reality lies somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Amen.
Exactly.
Natalie, you get your own magic wand, which I'm sure you probably already have. But this one actually works.
Should be so lucky.
And you can wave it and change one thing about this industry to make it a little bit better. What are you changing? What do you wish was different?
Wow, that's a big question. I think that part of what the pandemic did for women in this industry, and I guess for men too, but I'm speaking as a woman and as a mother, is it allowed for a little bit more recognition of work-life balance. I think this industry, I love it. I wouldn't want to be part of anything else, but it is no joke in terms of the commitment that you make to it.
It can be grueling at times. Yeah.
It's grueling. It is 14-hour days. It is consecutive days. It is a different schedule every week. And that can be hard on your life outside those arena doors.
Yeah.
And especially for young women coming into this industry, you know, you give it your all, it's 150%. And all of a sudden you can find yourself at a place where you think, wait, what, you know, I want a family. But I don't really have time for one because this job doesn't really give you a break. It's
Right.
it's full on all the time. And so I think that what the pandemic did was sort of open the curtains, so to speak, on our lives. And so the magic wand question, maybe it waved the magic wand a little bit, but I do feel like for for everybody, but certainly speaking as a woman and a mum, it has given us a little bit more flexibility. It has given us a little bit more freedom to not be so stressed by having that balance be necessary. I think that for many years in any industry, we sort of had to check our personal life at the door. But as a parent, you can't. I spend half of my day, whether I know it or not, thinking about what my son needs at some
Right.
point, whether it's that night for dinner or whether it's the doctor's appointment next week or his game. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think the magic wand that I would like to wave is making it a little bit more accessible for us to have that work-life balance and to have the ability to be both fully immersed into this incredible industry, but at the same time be given a little bit of the freedom and the time, frankly, that is needed to develop life outside of it and to have family and to nurture that family as much as you need to. And yeah, I don't
I
know.
think that's very well said. I think I co-sign on that, and if I also get a magic wand, I'll give you mine. You can wave both of them, and hopefully we get to that place because I hear
Yeah.
you.
And and I guess that's a magic wand on a personal level.
No, but I think the personal impacts the professional. I mean, we learned that a lot over the
Absolutely.
past few years.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
you want a healthy workplace. You want people that are mentally healthy and have a healthy
yes.
work-life balance. And so, the personal affects the professional, endlessly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hope, little by little that we are getting there.
Yeah, I do. I do. I
Because
actually have felt a shift,
yeah,
and again, we're not still not great.
no,
The first day of school, I'm at a New Kids on the Block concert until 11 o'clock at night. But thank God for Zoom, and then we get up early the next morning and have a nice breakfast, and you do what you got to do. But I do feel like there are definitely some opportunities to work from home, and the technology's helped us.
A little more grace
exactly.
given.
Absolutely. And the
Yeah.
work from home thing, I think, has been a game changer because, I mean, while if you're in the venue world, obviously so much of what you do has to be done on site, a lot of it can be done remotely. And that was one thing that I think we all came out of the pandemic realizing is not only can you be productive remotely, you probably could, in some ways, be more productive
Right.
remotely
Yeah.
because there is really very little distraction in terms of like I eat breakfast at my desk, I eat lunch at my
Yeah.
desk. There's no, oh, I'll go out for lunch or it's 6 o'clock, I have to drive home. There's no separation between work and life. You have to create that when your home is your office.
Yeah.
And so I do think that has obviously changed the game in terms of all of our ability to be a little bit more remote, have a little bit more freedom. And I think that freedom is probably priceless for most of us.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you on that. Hey, while we're talking, I just get lost listening to you talk and hearing your accent. I'm sure you hear that quite a bit, but you were born in England.
I was. I came over here when I was 12. I still talk like this because for many years, it was not an easy transition.
What brought your family to the States?
So my dad, I lived with my dad in England. My mum had already moved to the States. Strangely enough, all my family kind of have ties to the States. Little by little, my grandparents were in Miami. I spent my summers there as a child. My mum moved to Miami when I was younger. I lived with my dad in England until I was 12, and then he was offered a job, and he saw America, as many immigrants do, as kind of the paved with gold, full of opportunity. And so we packed up life in, northwest London as a sheltered little 12-year-old and moved to the deserts of Arizona. I thought I was moving to the Sahara. When he said we were moving to the desert, I had images of camels and
Camels
Omar
to
Sharif,
school.
if anybody is old enough to understand that reference.
Yes.
And
I got you.
and that's really where I thought I was moving. Lo and behold, it was actually a John Wayne movie. And but it was a tough transition.
I'm 12 years old. I mean, everything's tough, but moving from
Exactly.
England to Arizona, no small
Yeah.
move.
Yeah, and in those days as well, it was a long time ago, and it was before the internet. It was before the world was connected in the way that it is now. And so being a 12-year-old in England looked very different than a 12-year-old in Arizona. And I was also put into grades higher because of some of the way that I had tested coming out of the English education system, but I was in no way prepared socially to be bumped up into eighth grade. And it was a tough transition. I joke that I'm still trying to get over it. But in some ways it's true. But it was a wonderful experience. My father was very happy there, and I kind of did both. I spoke English to my family. It's not that I'm bilingual, but I'm by accent. So I would talk English to my family and I would talk American to my friends. And I did that for many years, and I felt somewhat schizophrenic.
Makes sense though. You're code switching to kind of assimilate
Yeah.
with friend groups, it makes sense.
Exactly. I mean, I already have red hair. I don't need to be any different at 12 years old than I already am. Like you can already find something to tease me about. We don't need to have an accent on top of it. So yeah, I did both for many years. And then when I was in college, I did a year abroad studying, and I thought, okay, I can't do this any longer. I will pick whichever one comes the most naturally, and that will be what I speak for the rest of my life. And
And that year abroad was in Beijing, right? You were in China.
it was,
I'm sure there you also kind of stood out in the crowd.
you could say that. Yeah, 5'10" redhead. I definitely was a sight to behold, but it was a life-changing experience without a doubt. I really did it on a whim, as you do with sometimes the most meaningful experiences of your life. I was in a religion class in college. I was a junior. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And my teacher was in the foreign exchange program and told us about an exchange to China. And I thought, oh, I'll apply. I'm probably not going to get it. And little did I know, probably there weren't that many people at that time who were looking maybe to spend a year in Beijing. So I did get it. Myself and another friend from school. And so, yeah, we lived in Beijing for about 10 months. We studied Chinese. I also taught English to Chinese students there. And we got to travel around the country. And this was in 94. So the country had not been open for long. I think Tiananmen Square was 89. So my first night there, I went to Tiananmen Square. They were announcing the Olympics. I think they were announcing like the 90 or the 2000 Olympics, I think. So I stood there because Beijing were up for hosting it. And there I was, whatever I was, 20 years old, standing in the middle of Tiananmen Square, waiting for the Olympics to be announced. I don't think that they didn't get it, with the Forbidden City behind me. And it was an incredible experience. I'm incredibly glad that I did it, although it wasn't always the easiest being on the other side of the world for that long.
How did you find your way into live events? Was there something that caught the bug? Did you fall backwards into it? What was your path into that?
I was never somebody who really had a clear vision of what I wanted to do with my career. I was always very jealous of people who said, I want to be a blank. And they had a clear path to get there. That was not who I was. It was more about the experiences that I wanted along the way, how I wanted my life to feel, to experience life, to be happy, a little bit idealistic at that young age. And so music was the thing I felt most passionate about, but I had very little understanding of the many areas of the live industry. It wasn't something that I was taught. There weren't a lot of resources, not in the same way there are now with, programs at USC or Belmont where you can really take time to kind of educate yourself and understand the many aspects of the industry and where you might best fit in. So I moved to New York after college because my mum lived there. And I had been going there for many summers, temping and kind of getting my feet wet in the professional world when I was still in high school and college and, working at different companies and trying to figure it all out. And so I ended up getting my first job when I worked in New York was working for a hotelier who called Ian Schrager. And he was one of the people who founded Studio 54 in the 70s. And he had started these boutique hotels in New York, the Royalton, the Paramount, the Mondrian. He had the Delano down in Miami Beach. And it was, that kind of 90s cool revival of these boutique hotels, but yet his world was very much in the New York kind of fashion scene. I remember the first day I picked up the phone and, I started as a receptionist and was then his assistant. And, it was like, hi, it's Calvin. Is Ian there? And I think I asked Calvin who the first time. And then I realized there really is only one Calvin. You don't really need to ask his last name. So it was a fun world to kind of be in, first of all. But it was the publicists who came in, again, an area I didn't know about, that I thought, that seems like the area that I might want to get into. And so from there, I did go and work for a major music publicist who will remain nameless because it was not a fabulous experience. It taught me a lot about how important it is to really jive with your boss. Sometimes it just doesn't work for whatever reason. It was a few very difficult, very educational months. But from that, my resume found itself at Atlantic Records. And I ended up getting a job there working for the head of publicity, Patty Conti. And I was there for a year and a half. And that allowed me a little bit more insight into the industry, onto the label side, the publicity side, really just opened my eyes to some of the options. And one of those was the tour managers and that I would talk to on the phone. Patty was very involved in the careers at the time of two major artists on the label, Jewel and Tori Amos. And so I got to know their representatives from talking to them on the phone all the time. And at some point I realized that the label world wasn't for me. I knew music was, but I just hadn't found my groove. And I was lucky enough to say, you know what, I'm going to take a step back and figure out what I want to do next. And as I did, I told Tori Amos's then tour manager, who is now her manager, John Witherspoon, who's a very good friend. And I said, I'm leaving Atlantic. And he said, oh, would you like to come out on the road? And I was like, I don't know. Would I? Tell me more. And so that began really a shift in the trajectory of my life, because not only did I say yes and went out on the road for a few years working for Tori and team, which was an incredible experience. But, I was a fan, certainly, of hers before I was an employee. But I got to really dig into a world that I knew nothing about. And it was glorious. I mean, touring is fantastic. It's like a traveling circus. And every night you're on a bus whizzing to a different city, and it's hard work. Again, it's grueling, it's long hours, but it was, I think, the first time that I felt, oh, wait, no, this is what I want. This experience of being part of live music every night.
Yeah.
This is
Right.
what
It's the
fuels me.
perfect alchemy. This is it. Yeah. This is what you
Yes,
were chasing. Yeah.
exactly. Whereas being on the label side or being on the publicity side, it had elements of that, but it was so far removed, or at least the experiences I had were so far removed,
Right.
that this was being in the thick of it. And I loved it.
Being a redhead on the road with Tori Amos,
Right.
were you able to be her body double at any points, like sneak off the bus with a ball cap and like distract people?
They're like, Tori's really tall.
Yeah, exactly. She grew because she's tiny. But
Yeah.
what used to happen is, and I used to joke I was getting a complex about it. So what would happen is the bus door would open, and I was lucky I would travel on the bus with her and the band, and everyone would, start yelling, and the crescendo would happen, and then they'd realize it would me, and there would be sort of this audible moan and let down. And I was like, guys,
Oh.
this is no way to greet a person. I do not need this on a daily basis. I am insecure enough. So yes, it worked for a second, but for not longer than that. But obviously, redheads understand each other.
Yes.
So I developed a lovely relationship with her and a lovely friendship. And there was never a night where I didn't enjoy. I was assistant tour manager on the road. I used to escort the photographers down into the pit and stand there and really, watch in awe along with the audience. And I would pinch myself nightly that I got to be where I was, literally and figuratively.
And you could see a lot of venues on that road as well.
Absolutely. I mean, little did I know when we played the Greek for the first time that I would call it home a few years later for the next decade and a half of my life. So it is lovely when those moments kind of come full circle.
Yeah, you spent 15 years as the director of artist relations and events with Nederlander Concerts, and so talk to us about that era of your life.
Again, I feel so lucky that I went from having that experience on the road. I ended up moving to Los Angeles because Tori was, going back to a previous conversation, trying to be a mom. And that work-life balance is difficult on the road. And so she took some time off. And that left it open for me to move to Los Angeles and kind of see what the next step was. And I was lucky enough when I was on tour, I was on my way she was playing, I think, the K-Rock Acoustic Christmas. And I was in the back seat of a car with her tour manager and her manager in the front seat. And I was sitting next to a gentleman called Ken Shear with Nederlander Concerts. I didn't know him. I met him then. And when I moved to Los Angeles in 2000, I called Ken. I didn't, know a lot of people and didn't quite know what was next for me, and didn't really want to stay on the road. I'd had such a lovely experience for a couple of years, but I also realized living out of a suitcase was probably ultimately not for me. It was a wonderful few years, but it was time to hang my clothes up in a closet.
Yes.
And but how could I still capture that feeling of being part of live music every night? So I worked briefly at NARAS at the Recording Academy, and I had always wanted to be part of the Grammys. And I did that for a little while, and then I called Ken one day. And he said, our artist liaison has just left the Greek. Give Mike Garcia a call. So I did. And I went up there for an interview and I got the job, thank God, and was there for 14 years. And it was the perfect transition from life on the road to having the best of both worlds, being part of a nightly live music experience and all that comes with that, but being able to get in my car at the end of the day or the beginning of the morning, as the case may be, and drive home and sleep in my own bed. So I really found the best of both worlds.
And a gorgeous venue. I mean,
Yeah.
I love the I forget what it's called, but it's like a hospitality area, right? That's almost like on
The
this deck.
redwood deck.
Yes, among the
Yes.
trees, gorgeous. I mean, just incredible. You feel like you're floating in the trees with, a nice drink in your hand. It's really
And it's an
quite
amazing
an
place.
experience. Yeah.
It is, and it was never lost on me as I used to drive up that street every day from kind of the hustle and bustle of LA into Griffith Park, which is where the Greek is. It was never lost on me how incredibly fortunate I was. My office looked out onto the Redwood deck. Deer would come down the artist drive, and you think to yourself, how am I in LA right now?
Right.
But yeah, so the that position there was very unique to a venue that is sort of smack dab in the middle of the industry and has so many people to take care of, and that's what I did, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed taking care of people, so it worked well for me. It was everything. It was sort of like I liken it to being a promoter rep, but without the production side of things. So we had a production manager. I was more of the liaison with the tour manager, with management, with the agencies, with the labels, with tour sponsorship, the activation of any of the events that needed to happen on site, the Redwood deck and the industry at large. I did all the ticketing, for the shows themselves, the artist ticketing. And so again, it was very varied. Every day was different, which I loved. And it was really something that I didn't plan to be there for, as you do in your career. You don't plan to be somewhere so long. But when you wake up happy every day, loving your job, loving the people that you work with, and loving what you do, you think, well, why would I go do something else?
Right.
So I did it for a long time and loved every minute of it. I would go out and try and sneak out into the house, at least once every show when I wasn't either eating dinner at my desk at 10 o'clock at night or
Yeah.
trying to get, ahead of whatever the show was coming in the next morning that I needed to pull tickets for. But it was, again, as I'm sure most people feel in this venue, it's never lost on you when you get to stand there and look out at 6,000 smiling faces and think, I have been a small part of this experience. There's nothing better. It keeps you going, when your feet feel like somebody's caning you and you got to
Right.
come back the next day and do it all again.
Yeah.
It's those moments that keep you going.
Yeah.
So how did you make the transition then to Arena Network?
So, Nederlander Concert had both operated and booked the Greek Theatre, which is a city-owned building, for 40 years. And as unfortunately happens, all good things come to an end. And the city put out an RFP, and it became the battle of the ages for anybody that lives here in LA or read
We
about
Are the
it.
Greek campaign.
We Are the Greek.
Yeah. I see. I
Oh
still
my
got
God,
one in my
what?
office somewhere too.
Oh my gosh, Dave, you have the
Yeah.
pin.
Still
I
have the
have my
button on my
t-shirt.
desk.
Yeah.
I have my t-shirt. It really was a labor of love,
Yeah.
because it was the family, and we were doing everything we could to stay where we were, and it was a messy battle. But and unfortunately, at the end, Nederlander lost the contract, and it became an open building, which it is to this day. And so, with that, unfortunately, I lost my job and found myself after 14 years wondering what's next. Fortunately, during those 14 years, I had made a lot of contacts and made a lot of friends, and I wasn't looking to leave Los Angeles. And so I was given the opportunity to work at Arena Network, which was really a sort of a pivot for me. I had been in this very focused LA world, Greek theater, doing what I was doing. And all of a sudden, Arena Network was focused on booking, which is something I had been involved in, but very peripherally. And with many markets in many venues with many different needs. And so it was a real learning curve for me and a challenge, but one that I was excited about taking on, which was learning a different side of the business and learning it from the perspective of, a national perspective rather than Los Angeles only, which is what I had been focused on for many years. And fortunately, Ed Rubenstein, who was the CEO of Arena Network at the time, and Tina Suka, a good friend of mine, was also there. And they both took a chance and believed in me. And so I joined the team, first as director of entertainment, and then a year later when Tina left as VP of entertainment. And so it has been a wonderful experience getting to learn and know so much more about the industry from the perspective of every kind of market, every size venue, and the many needs that come along with that, and the many challenges, and how to help as best we can in our roles. The company continues to grow, and I take that as a sign that we are providing a needed service and hopefully providing it well. Most of our growth comes from word of mouth from the members that are currently in the group. And again, that's the highest compliment. And so that's how I've landed where I am. I mean, I was thinking about it before this, to think that in 25 years, I really only had two jobs. And I can't believe it's been that long. And
Goes fast.
it really, it's frightening, truly, truly frightening. And as you know, with kids, it's like a whole nother level of fast.
And you met your husband along the way on this adventure too. Tell that story quickly.
I did. We joke. We didn't really like each other. He was a sound engineer on tour with Tori. He's a Dutchman. He's
Dutchman. I like how you have to mention that.
Yeah. We almost didn't get together. It was the last night of the tour. And
Yes.
as happens. And we figured out we kind of did like each other after all. And so, we've been together since right before the millennium. We went down and spent New Year's Eve, 1999 to 2000 down in New Zealand. And we've been together ever since. And so he's now not in the live side of things. He's more on the web development side of things. And we moved to Los Angeles together, and we get to go back to Holland pretty regularly and see his family, and occasionally to England and see some of mine. And
That's great.
We have a beautiful 10-year-old boy and a good life.
That's awesome. Hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your adventures with us and your stories. Really, I feel like I've known you for a long time, but really didn't know your story, and a lot to unpack there. Before we let you go, I want to hit you with our Fast Five. It's just 5 quick questions looking for your short, immediate response. First up, what was your very first concert?
My first concert, it's funny, I was thinking about this too, because nothing makes you feel old like somebody's final tour that was your first concert, which is Cyndi Lauper.
Yeah, okay.
So she is about to embark on her farewell tour, and I was like, good Lord, already? That makes me really old.
Another famous redhead.
Yes. She was my first, real big arena concert. Followed up by Madonna and the Beastie Boys.
That's
so
strong, solid.
Not a bad second place either.
Do you have a favorite concert?
Oh, it either is David Bowie at the Supper Club in New York, which was this tiny venue. I don't know how many it seats, but I venture to guess less than 1,000. And I was lucky enough to see him there. And that was, something that has stayed with me forever. But probably my favorite was Stevie Wonder at the Greek. I am a huge Stevie Wonder fan, and he had never played the Greek, and my boss, Rena Wasserman, knew what a fan I was and how excited I was. So once we got ticketing done, which granted took a little longer than I would have liked it to have, she took my radio off of me. She gave me tickets. My husband came up. We sat, front and center. She brought out a favorite bottle of my French white wine, and I sat there crying literally for most of the concert.
That's beautiful.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I have a picture. He then went out onto the redwood deck. Afterwards, he set up a keyboard and he does a little meet and greet. And she kept the house photographer there so
Wow.
that we could get some shots. And I have a picture, and my husband jokes that I look happier in that picture than I do on my wedding day when I'm shaking everyone's hand. But it's true. I mean, those are like moments come true. And so probably that is the one that lives in my heart forever.
What's your favorite thing to do on a day off?
On a day off, I do love to shop. I have to say that's something that I definitely enjoy. Retail therapy. It's not called retail therapy for nothing. But probably, really what I want to do is nothing with my family. And by nothing, I mean take a hike, go to the beach, go and grab brunch, just enjoy a beautiful sunny day in Los Angeles, connect with my family, see friends, and occasionally take in a show at someone else's venue.
What one thing do you miss most about England?
The chocolate.
Yeah, really?
Chocolate.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the chocolate. Everybody that goes to England has to bring me back chocolate. You can go to World Market and you can get some, but you don't get to come through the front door if you've been to England without at least 2 packets of Cadbury's Dairy Milk for me. I have a stash. I have a whole drawer in the refrigerator that is dedicated to chocolate.
Gosh.
I don't eat a lot of it.
I've got to look this up, see if I can get it off the black market online.
Yeah, and
Chocolate
maybe
market.
the humor. Yeah, humor. I also love the kind of sarcastic, biting British humor. There's really nothing like it.
Last question for you. What's your theme song? There's a TV show where reality cameras follow you around, filming your whole life. And what's the song that plays over the opening credits to the Natalie show?
Oh my gosh. The song that comes to mind, which isn't really my theme song, it would be more my family's, is Lovely Day by Bill Withers. We played it at our wedding and it just kind of became our song. And I'm a big Bill Withers fan. And when he came to the Greek, I was definitely a big fangirl. But I honestly, that's a great question. What would it be? Funnily, because we've just mentioned Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun has come up into my head, which really isn't my theme song, but I would like it to be.
But it'd be good. Right, yeah, right. We can all
That's a
hope.
great
Who
one.
doesn't want that to be their theme song? So we'll go with that. I'm sure if given enough time and
You'll have a good answer about 2:00 this morning.
yeah, for sure. For
Those
sure.
different songs for each episode, truly.
Yeah, I was telling Paul yesterday that I still have nightmares about forgetting the question asked to me on stage at EVMC.
Oh, no.
Halfway through my answer. Oh, I still wake up at night. I still actually sweat.
I don't mean to
when
laugh. I
think
don't mean to
about
laugh.
it.
I get it. Yeah, we've all been there. We all have those moments
Well, it will live with me forever. At some point, I need to do some therapy work and get rid of it and let it go.
But as you and I talked about, where we beat ourselves up more than anyone else, right? It's like, it's the things everyone remembers the things that we think other people remember that truly no one does. And honestly, Dave and I sat next to each other during that session, and I'm being totally honest here. We listened to that session, loved it, and we both clocked that we needed to have you on the podcast sometime.
Truth.
And then we both said it to each other. Like, we leaned in and Dave's like, I think, and I was like, I'm right there with you. I've already got it in my notes app on my phone. So maybe it's kismet. You have this haunting you from this question, but in reality, neither one of us remembered it. And we just remembered that we really wanted to have you on the podcast. And here we are.
Well, I think you might have just cured me.
There we
So
go.
I truly appreciate that, because that may have been what I needed to hear.
You're healed. You're healed.
Yeah.
Well, shared experiences help heal us all, and you do a lot of that through your efforts there at the Arena Network Venue Coalition. Before we let you go, if somebody wants to learn more about what you do or reach out to you, any plugs you want to throw out, now's the time.
Appreciate it. And let me just say, I really appreciate you, Dave, specifically, along with so many of the seasoned marketing people that are part of Arena Network and Venue Coalition, because while our focus is primarily on booking, the support for the marketing teams cannot be understated. I mean, obviously, you're who reaches the fans. You're how tickets get sold. And without it, the events would not be as successful as they are. And so we've always felt like it was really important for us to support that side of things as well. And you are certainly a voice anytime that we need it to, for expertise, for experience, for inspiration. You and your entire Columbus team, I mean, Tracy and Leslie, to have those people within the group is what makes the group. We facilitate a lot of the time, but it's the members who truly create the strength of the network, whether that's the calls that we have or the booking calls that we have. And so it's really the success of the group is based on the input of the members. And so, thank you to you, because you're always somebody that we can go to
it's hard to
help us. Listen, we're
we'll keep him
grateful
around.
for it.
We were thinking about booting him off of the podcast, but he's all right.
It's a shame he's so shy, really. That's well done bringing him out of his shell as well. I mean, you're an inspiration to people who really need a face for the venue, and maybe have inspired people to get a little bit outside of their comfort zone and get in front of the camera and do a fraction of the things that you guys do in Columbus. And so really that's ultimately what we're about, is trying to support, to inspire, to give a platform for people to learn and to continue to learn and to not feel so isolated and alone in this industry. And hopefully I get the chance to do it for many years to come and see your face on our calls as well. If you do want to learn more about what Venue Coalition and Arena Network have to offer, you are welcome to reach out to me personally, Natalie at arenanetwork.net. You can go to venuecoalition.com. You can go to arenanetwork.net. We would love to talk to you about ways in which we can help support your booking and your operational and your marketing efforts out there in this exciting but sometimes daunting industry that we all love.
Oh, that was just so great. I really enjoyed speaking with you today and hearing about your stories, and best of luck to you and the family as the adventure continues. And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. Remember, you can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. Let's find this person some chocolate.
Amen.
Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.